E te iwi anei a kārere tahe e mihi atu nei tēnā koutou katoa. The coalition is slashing public service jobs, more than 3,000 jobs gone. More than 1,000 jobs cut in one single day this week. Behind those figures are people. Two wahine Māori with an impressive long-standing public service history saw the political writing on the wall and stepped out. Irena Smith reports.
You can't have this number of people leaving without it having some sort of impact.
Moving out, moving on. Ata te Kanawa and Kararaina Calcott Crib are two experienced public servants who have left their roles recently with no firm plans on where to go next.
It's been good being, in the public service, but it's also has its challenges along the way. I never thought that we would get that Rautaki Māori way back then.
Ata worked at the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, known as MB.
The key thing for our team was establishing and maintaining good relationships within the Māori community. We have lots of initiatives that require good engagement, good quality engagement. And for the most part, we've used our own personal networks for that, as you do. Whakapapa comes in handy. That was really valuable for our whānau, external, to know that we were there and to have great belief, albeit misguided, that we would be there to look after their best interests. And I'd like to say that we have done that to the best of our ability. Because the thing is, you're Māori first, you happen to work somewhere, or you might happen to work for the government, but essentially you're Māori first.
Kararaina was at MHUT, which takes care of Aotearoa's housing and urban development.
In designing policy, you can't design it from Wellington. I think that's been a clear message to everyone, but we were able to get out and talk to the people and look at what they were talking about that they needed. But one of the things that was clarified to us by many whānau Māori out there was that the system was too fragmented, and they found it really hard to actually enter to get some help around building homes on their own whenua.
When it comes to being a Māori specialist, that's a value we hold. We understand it. We don't necessarily have a great description of it in our CVs, but we know it intrinsically. We know our value. And I guess, truthfully, not everyone has the same perspective of that. And so, yeah, I was a specialist in engagement, but that wasn't something that was clearly understood by non-Māori. I know I'm not alone in working for the government and always having to prove your credibility. And that's kind of exhausting, actually. So I'm not going to miss that part of it.
I think you always feel valued by your people. Sometimes you feel a little bit challenged by trying to navigate some sharp corners or some narrow passages where things don't come together quite as nicely as you'd want them to. And that just takes work. You just have to be patient and, build some balance into the way in which you make those approaches. So, yes, we got there. I think that we were really successful in the programs that we've delivered, and that success has been realised in the communities.
The government's attitude towards Māori issues is being felt throughout the public service.
Plans to cut spending in the public service are going further than National originally proposed, with fears they'll go beyond the back room.
Many businesses in Wellington will feel the pinch when hundreds of public sector jobs go in the capital.
It's been a bleak few weeks, with nearly 2,000 jobs proposed to be scrapped in the public sector. This is just the beginning.
Prime Minister Christopher Luxon saying his government wants more medical doctors, not more spin doctors.
Oh, that's a cheap shot. What the heck?
We want more medical doctors, not more spin doctors.
That's a silly thing to say. And it's, it's a kick in the guts for public servants.
He said there was waste in the public sector, and his government was determined to weed out wasteful spending and ensure value for money as it worked to balance the books and deliver tax cuts to New Zealanders.
That makes me feel really glad that I'm no longer there. Well, yeah, you know, if I had second thoughts in the beginning, pretty much progressively as the weeks have gone on, I'm like, oh no, I did the right thing. The political environment at the moment, given the new government, is that in one hand, we've had a lot of Pākehā colleagues kind of go out of their way to be proactive, which is really cool. But on the other hand, of course, others that weren't as onto it or as culturally adept as that particular group. The others will obviously have kind of a bit of free license now to question it, you know, to question things like Māori names.
There's uncertainty within the ranks of the new government over its English First directive. The Prime Minister is continuing to call the housing agency Kāinga Ora, despite signing a coalition deal with Winston Peters, promising government departments would be referred to by their English names first.
Some of it's not targeted, but it is, you know, and I think that you can sometimes think about all the things that are being said or all the things that are accumulated in the way in which the approaches are being made, and some might think that that's kind of a formation of benign assimilation, you know. So I think that is something that many Māori would feel.
I do acknowledge those that haven't left, but it's a haven't left yet situation. This is a rolling beast.
So what happens when Māori aren't in the rooms where government designs its policies?
The Māori community is vulnerable to what government comes up with. Government like to think they're rigorous in their work that they do. But then if they don't kind of know what we know, that makes it challenging. I'm trying to be really diplomatic here.
I can tell.
Nah, we're up against it all the time.
But when Māori are in the room, magic can happen.
I think in this nearly 5 years that I've worked with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, we have made some significant change in the lives of many whānau across the motu. I think we've probably done around 1,600 to 1,700 homes in a short space of time. On whenua Māori, working with the prototypes, these 4 prototypes, which leads to some kind of devolvement to iwi to lead their own delivery of housing and to work with their people.
So if the public service has lost its appeal, what's next?
I think there's lots of opportunity for us with our skills, resources and experience to contribute back home, and also connect to your whānau. Like I'm going back to our homestead. My son and my mokopuna live there. She goes to the wharekura. You know, all of that good, fluffy stuff. And equally the stuff that's not so fluffy, but real.
Kia whai tōna ho tatari, kia ngā wari, ka pai.
At the moment, I'm weaving, which is, you know, a part of me that wanted to be able to do that. I'm going to help some of the whānau that I've been working with, so I'll do a bit of that work as well. And, yeah, no, new horizons.
So nothing, I mean, in terms of you don't have an actual job to go to?
No, I'm finding there's only so many rooms I can clean in the house. I think by the end of this week that's going to run out of, you know, something to do. So I don't know, I'll rearrange something, dig some dirt, put some gardens in. Yeah, but mostly weaving. I want to spend some time doing what I wanted to do, which is my new love. So yeah, spend some time there.
Hoki mai anō ki tā tātou hōtaka kawe pūrongo, tamariki Māori make up less than a quarter of all kids in Aotearoa, but more than half of the 4,400 kids in state care are Māori. Oranga Tamariki has just signalled hundreds of jobs will go, so what will that mean for our most vulnerable? Chabi the Kani, who heads the organisation, declined an invitation to talk to Marae to discuss the cuts and the future of our children in state care. I'm joined by Anton Blanc, a researcher and advocate for children's rights, and opposition children and youth spokesperson Willow Jean Prime. Tēnā kōrua, thank you both for coming in this morning. I'll start with you, Willow Jean. Your reaction to these public sector cuts?
Speechless. I was absolutely speechless when I heard that over 447 jobs are going to be cut from Oranga Tamariki. Speechless because I fail to see what the organisation's plan is and how it can claim that this will result in better services for our most at-risk and vulnerable children. Such deep cuts is going to only make things worse for our tamariki. And I, along with many others who I have spoken to, fail to see what Oranga Tamariki's plan is to deliver those better services by cutting 447 jobs, 9% of the organisation, almost every department impacted by these proposed cuts.
And not the only department across the sector, there are cuts. Some, I mean, they sound deep. Interestingly, the Public Service Commission shows the sector increased, some say hugely under Labour. About 5,000 jobs were added in 1 year from June 2022. So the proposed cuts, and I'm talking across the sector at this point, we'll come to Oranga Tamariki, but the proposed cuts could, some might say, be regarded as comparatively small.
Well, when you are talking about 9% of Oranga Tamariki, 447 jobs for those who are tasked and responsible with protecting our most vulnerable and at-risk children, and the Prime Minister describes this as wasteful spending, I don't agree with him. And I think that this is going to lead to worse outcomes for our tamariki. And this is all about saving money, so that the government can pay for its tax cuts with other funding. So the organisation has been asked to cut 6.5% of its spending, and these staffing cuts are to achieve that 6.5%. This isn't about better services for our tamariki. This is about saving money for the government.
What do you make of the cuts, Anton?
Well,
as a child advocate?
Yeah, well, I think any time that the government starts tinkering with services that impact Māori, we should be concerned about the changes. And
so Willow Jean's got a point, hasn't she? Because roughly 7% is going to be cut from all these departments. It's 9% for Oranga Tamariki.
Yes, 9%, and a lot of those will be Māori staff. So around 30% of OT staff are Māori. So obviously, you know, we're concerned about those staff and what's going to happen to them. But I think the broader concern is around Oranga Tamariki's ability to deal with whānau Māori. The service has been broken for a very long time. We've been trying to fix it since the 1980s, and I wonder whether this this provides the current climate provides an opportunity for us to reinvent that system and devolve those services out to Māori services.
Do you agree with that, Willow Jean, that this is an opportunity for OT to be reimagined, reinvented, and to be able to actually service children better?
Well, picking up on that point, what concerns me is at the same time as these cuts, and of course, when those cuts is the cut to the treaty response unit to a number of kaimahi Māori. But at the same time, we have the Minister proposing to repeal Section 7AA, which is the treaty principles clause within the legislation. That is currently before the Waitangi Tribunal. It is opposed by many, many Māori. How can they reimagine how they're going to deliver better for Māori when they are not consulting with Māori over these proposed changes within the organisation or the repeal of such a significant section within their legislation?
What do you make of that, Anton? 7AA is meant to be a protection for treaty principles.
Yeah, well,
with this removal, what do you make of it?
We're all concerned about the government's intentions in terms of treaty approaches. However, what I would go back to is what I said before, that actually we've been tinkering with this service since the 1980s, trying to make it fit for Māori, and we just can't make it work.
If you were the minister, what would you do?
I would be devolving those services out to iwi and Māori service providers. So I'm working with Te Whare Ruriho or Marae, for example, a big social service provider in South Auckland, and with pilot programs that they've done in conjunction with Oranga Tamariki, they have been able to keep kids out of care when they are introduced into casework early enough. Ngā Puhi do amazing work with youth justice placement, so they keep Ngā Puhi kids out of youth justice facilities by placing them with caregivers and providing wraparound services.
So what would be the purpose of Oranga Tamariki? Would we not need it anymore?
I think that there needs to be some kind of testing of a devolution model to Māori. As Māori, we are much more committed to keeping our tamariki out of the system than the system itself is. And the problem for Māori is that once we get into the system, whether it's Oranga Tamariki or the justice system, the interventions intensify. So we make up about 50% of the referrals into Oranga Tamariki, and then as we go in, we around 70% of children in care are Māori children. So our goal really needs to keep the children right out of the system.
Okay, so Willow Jean, Anton says OT is broken. There have been moves by...
it's broken and it can't be fixed.
It's broken and it can't be fixed. Let's clarify that. That's what Anton says. Do you agree with that? And should services be devolved to iwi?
So I agree that there are huge systemic issues with Oranga Tamariki, as evidenced by over 20 reports from the Waitangi Tribunal through to the Ombudsman,
is it
the
broken?
Children's Commission.
Is it broken?
It is broken.
And can it be fixed?
And there are numerous recommendations in those reports which should be being implemented, from Puao o Te Atatu right through to the most recent Ombudsman and Tribunal reports.
So it can be fixed?
Which includes in those recommendations the devolution of services to communities. Doing that in a way which upholds the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi in partnership with Māori. That's not what we're hearing and seeing from this current government. They want to remove that section. They want to leave that to chance and choice of the current, of the chief executive of the organisation. I, along with many others, have serious concerns that in that transition and transformation of the organisation, there is not a protection clause in there for Māori, and that's one of the issues that I am raising.
Let me ask you about this. There was a report from Aroturuki Tamariki, the Independent Children's Monitor, earlier this year. It found that from between June 22 and 23, abuse and neglect in state care increased by 184 cases, up to nearly 900, meaning that the 4,500 children in state care were more likely to be experiencing neglect or abuse. What did you make of that report?
Again, like I said, over 20 reports on Oranga Tamariki which have identified the systemic failures of it. I was encouraged by the work that Oranga Tamariki is doing to implement some of those recommendations in those reports, recently speaking at Select Committee on that. However, there is so much more work to be done. How are they going to do that with 440?
So just let me ask you this quickly before I come to Anton. Can it be fixed? Do we want it fixed, or do we devolve to iwi?
We absolutely want it fixed, and part of that fix, as has been recommended, is the devolution of services and working.
Should it just take on a monitoring role?
I think.
Sorry, let's come to Anton. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a range of options, and we would need to explore how that works. But fundamentally, the solution is now to devolve and figure out what that partnership between government and iwi Māori might look at. But we don't need any more reports. We know what the problems are. We've known for 50 years, and still what we see is more Māori children coming into care, and particularly in youth justice facilities, which is often the entry point for these young people into the criminal justice system. So I think we're really at the point of saying, as Māori, we know what to do. We have the services. We have very sophisticated, large workforce, and we can drive and design the solutions.
Are we at that point, Willow Jean? Do you agree?
We are at that point, and in fact, that was the work that the previous Minister, Kelvin Davis, was doing with Oranga Tamariki to implement the recommendations of those reports.
Kelvin also wanted more.
Kelvin wanted more what?
Kelvin wanted more youth justice facilities. I was gobsmacked just before the election. He was advocating for more youth justice homes. And this is what I'm saying about the government. They will always tend towards high-level interventions for whānau Māori. So it's time for us to take control and keep our families away from the system.
Willow G?
What we now have is a government that is proposing to introduce boot camps, fund it from the 6.5% savings that they are finding by cutting 447 staff, to repeat processes of the past which have proven not to work for Māori. So I don't believe what I'm hearing from the Minister and from Oranga Tamariki in terms of a way forward outlines a clear plan on how they're going to address these issues.
Well, yep, we have to wrap up.
Both going into the election, both Labour and National were taking a tough on crime approach, and that is always going to be bad for whānau Māori, because that's going to increase surveillance of Māori communities and increase the number of Māori in jail.
We have to wrap up. You've got 20 seconds each. Chapi Te Kani, the head of OT, says this change goes to our core as a ministry. It fundamentally moves us away from where we are towards the kind of ministry we need to be. What does the ministry need to be?
What I would like to say to Chapi is devolve and devolve now, and I think that he knows that that is the correct solution.
And Willow Jean?
What I would like to say to Chappie is to show us all that plan. We cannot see what that end game is. All we are seeing is 447 jobs being cut, 6.5% reduction in funding within the organisation, the establishment of boot camps, to repeat things that we have seen haven't worked in the past. Show us the plan and work with Māori, your treaty partners, to develop the solutions to work on the devolution that has been talked about today.
What's the destination for our most vulnerable, essentially? Thank you so much, both of you. Tēnā kōrua. It's wonderful to have you both in here and have your views on this very difficult situation. E te iwi kia ora, hui hui mai anō. Inside a dust-free industrial warehouse is the only Māori art dealer and gallery owner in Tāmaki Makaurau. Tim Melville is a gallerist. He finds the artists and provides the space to showcase the fine art from paintings to pottery. He specialises in international Indigenous collaborations, and he's busy with exhibitions, art fairs and supporting artists around the motu. Tim Melville took time out for Marae and showed Jodi Ihaka around his gallery.
You want to make a space that feels good for people to come in and have a look. Looking at art should be an enjoyable thing, and sometimes galleries can be scary. You know, they come into the white cube and they think someone's going to be mean to them. The more welcoming you can make it, manaakitanga is important for all of this stuff. The more welcoming you can make it, it's good for business as well. You know, the more likely you are that you're going to be able to sell something to someone. And that's what we're here for. We don't sell artworks. We close the door. There's different ways to install different things, like these ceramic pieces by Tracy Keith. He's a Māori potter born in Tokoroa. I don't think he's probably seen his work on a blue plinth before.
Truly beautiful.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That's part of your job, to style the product as to how it looks?
The artwork has to be seen to its best advantage. And that's where I come in. And again, artists, sometimes they're so focused on the piece itself that they can't see the room, they can't see how a collector might come in and have a look and imagine it in their own houses. So that's my job, to help people imagine how it's going to be in their lives. There are thousands of artists, there's like 12 galleries. The dice is loaded against the artist. That's the awful thing, you know, and you feel so responsible because we end up becoming these gatekeeper tastemakers when this is just what I like. I have so much admiration for them. The artists show their work, it's like taking their clothes off in public. You know, it's like, look at me, what do you think? And they could be shot down in flames. So that relationship of trust is really important.
Tim Melville was living in London working for British Airways when an art history degree he'd started to stave off boredom kick-started his new creative career.
all the light bulbs started going off. I loved it. I loved it. I started to think, how can I make this my job? And Tate Modern had just opened in London. You know, it was like this whole thing was going on, and I was like this boy behind the glass window trying to get in. How do you get in? They're the ones paying the...
Decades later, he's one of the go-to guys for Māori artists.
The process of becoming the go-to guy, which I don't think I am. I'm not the only one, there are others. It was sort of about finding out who I was over time. You know, the longer I've been home in New Zealand, you know, reconnecting with my own whakapapa, finding out where I belong, where I can contribute. All of that was just this slow process.
Mind That Māori.
Our opening show for this year would be called Mind That Māori. And then everything started kicking off. New government, treaty, all of this stuff was happening. And so rather than make their usual multicoloured works, they decided that they wanted to make works in black and white. And so that's where this piece came from as well. Yeah, and they talk about, you know, the night being darkest before the dawn, you know, the dark night of the soul, but there being light at the end of the tunnel. So, you know, it's black and white, but it also represents hope, the light of the future.
Even though it is black and white and the kaupapa behind it, I still just want to cuddle it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, if this were a carved, you know, whakairo, you know, rākau,
yeah,
it would be kind of scary. But they seduce us with the wool. It's soft. And, you know, we're drawn in and we want to touch it. And, you know...
Yeah, am I allowed to actually touch
probably
this one
shouldn't, but I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Little pom-poms.
Tim is equally interested in Aboriginal art.
I want to show the connections between Aboriginal art and Māori art, if you like, and the connections between the way we think about whenua, country. It's super organic, clay and ochre and black sand and stone and, yeah.
In Aotearoa, Māori art is having a moment following the Toi Tū Toi Ora exhibition at the Auckland Art Gallery.
And the landscape shifted. Suddenly we were in this different terrain. The tastemakers, if you want to call it that, the collectors, were like, why haven't we seen these artists before? It's like, we've been here this whole time, you just haven't noticed. And so it's time to be noticed.
Koe a koe. Jodi, that is, and Tim, of course, that's Marae for this week. You can watch and share all the stories online. The team will be back with you next Sunday. Kia hau maru te noho, hei te rawaki. Ko te reo, te take.